I'm Lost Dave. The pieces I've got in the show at the moment are the wire sculptures of the birds, the grills. They are things that I've been working on for probably about 3 years now. Started off as very, very small things. I do a lot of beach combing, so I use a lot of found materials. And I found some bundles of wire. The easiest thing to make out of a bundle of wire is like a little, those little plastic ducks you put in the bath.
Yeah.
So started at that point, did a few of those, and I find materials and I turn them into things and I leave them where I find them. So it's all part of the free art movement thing.
Could you tell me a bit about yourself and your involvement here?
Yes, my name's Paul. I'm a street and urban artist, and I kind of paint under the name My Dog Size, but it's much easier to use the terms Paul when we're chatting away. So I work a lot out on the street, again a bit like Dave, using kind of found materials, things that I can find on the street, and I'm probably kind of most well known for picking up a baked bean can which had been squashed in the road and bringing that to life. And one of the pieces that I've got in the show here today is a crushed can that I've kind of painted as an owl and brought to life.
Great. And what about yourself? Your involvement here is with the university.
I'm Nicola, and I'm running a unit on the illustration course which asks our students to visualise an animal. Something about an animal that piques their interest, something that they're really interested in. And they research and develop a series of imagery which hopefully goes some way to explaining what it is they want to communicate about the animal. And that's the unit. But quite a few years ago now, all these really lovely images were just kind of disappearing off with the students again. So I started to collate them together and began to build up a blog, which gradually over the years, the students put their own images to it, but gradually over the years it's kind of incorporating quite a lot of imagery now. And then a little while ago I was approached to put together an exhibition for it, which is what the Illustrated Menagerie exhibition here is.
So this is what has brought you all together essentially. It's this wonderful exhibition which is a collaboration between you both and yourself and the students. Could you give me a bit more of an overview of that so that we understand what we could be seeing and what the involvement is?
The work itself ranges over both a long period of time. Some of it dates back, I think, to 2008 is possibly the earliest piece, up to work which was produced a few weeks ago. It's a range of work which is both kind of more developed, finished imagery and also very experimental pieces on the go there with some of the pieces like the wire sculptures. It also ranges a great deal in scale and content, and it's very varied. It really is a menagerie. It's named that for a good reason. And certainly when I was invited to put it out as an exhibition, and we knew that there was Arts Council funding for it, the idea then of bringing in people who are really making a fantastic name for themselves out there, both locally but also internationally, to work alongside our students was just thrilling. It's a really exciting thing to be able to do. So I approached Lost Dave and My Dog Size and invited them to work with our students. And they've so far enjoyed it immensely, I think.
Yes, would you agree? What's been the appeal for you to be involved?
It's always the chance to show your work, opportunities to show your work, but also to do group exhibitions like this one. Just seeing your work in the context of what other people are doing. And I think as a professional working artist, that's a really important thing. The solo shows are great, but what's really interesting is to come along and see how other artists are interpreting the same or a similar theme. I think that's always very inspirational, very inspiring. Plus there's the opportunity to actually, I've been a teacher for the last 10 years, and I've always thought of myself as being sort of an artist who does a bit of teaching, but it's really nice to come in and work with students of another level. I mean, I've taught primary and secondary, but this is the first opportunity I've had to work with degree level students, and it has its own challenges. It's a really interesting kind of meeting.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it's all about upping your game, I think. And, you know, where we've done sort of exhibitions and things together in the past, the great thing about the local art scene, you know, I mean, it's actually very, very varied around Southsea. There's a very broad range of artists, and we all network regularly, we all know each other locally, and so on and so forth. And one of the benefits of all of that is this cross-fertilisation of ideas, and seeing somebody doing something and thinking, I've got to get better at that, I've got to improve on that, I can do better, I can, you know, and it's that thing of upping your game. And I've come along here, and, you know, my birds are in this exhibition with other students' work, and I'm looking at students' work and thinking, right, okay, you know, there is still a distance that I can go. I can still move on, and I can still make my work more interesting, more dynamic, you know, get a lot more into it. So I've got a lot from doing the workshops in the exhibition as well.
Yeah.
You know, as well as being able to bring all my teaching experience to it.
I think it's a big thing for the students as well. You know, that kind of first step into exhibiting your work. You know, we've had experience, and, you know, and that's something we're kind of used to as professional artists. But, you know, it is hanging your work on a wall. You know, there isn't any more than that, really. No. But it's kind of that collectively working together and building, you know, putting in the best piece of work that you can produce and putting it alongside other people. You know, the idea of the, you know, students coming in and being able to exhibit with, you know, people that are, you know, are doing it and are making, you know, a living from it. You can, it kind of helps them see a little bit of what, you know, what it's like to move into that world when they make that next stage on. And, you know, like Dave said, you know, there's some great quality of work in there. So, you know, you do feel when we're asked as professionals, you carry that weight of expectation. You know, so everyone's expecting you to produce this fantastic piece of work. So you do, you know, there is
That's
that
a really
pressure.
exciting thing about being a fresh artist, a young artist, and being able to hang your work alongside a really well-known person, somebody who you know and admire and have followed for a while, being able to hang your work next to them in the same show, and it's a real kind of pat on the back. But at the same time, you know, it's us coming in and sort of seeing
we've got that pressure.
What's coming up in the next wave, the next generation of artists, and sort of there are challenges in that because it's always changing. It's always very mutable. You know, I didn't start doing sculptures until 3 years ago. Before that, I was flat. I was a painter. You know, so it's you're always looking for that new edge.
And I guess role models as well. That's a big thing with the students. Not only you can read about people, I'm sure they read about both of you and know what work you do, but to meet you and then also exhibit alongside you. What are some of the students' reactions?
They have been really excited. First of all, they're really excited to be meeting, you know, people whose work they admire. And I think they've been really picking their brains, actually, in terms of how they do what they do. And it really is the nitty-gritty of some of the detail.
Yeah, it is the day-to-day. You never really think the life of an artist is that you sit in the studio and paint. Well, it's such a small percentage of what you do in your life. You know, putting an exhibition on, promoting the show, you know, networking with other artists, and you know, we've got a really good network of artists within the city. And then to link in with the university now is a really good chance for us to start, you know, looking for those students that really want to reach outside the, you know, although I'm at college and this is what I'm going to do, and they're starting to think about, well, you know, what happens afterwards? Where do I, you know, how do I move into the creative society that I'm living? So, you know, we're starting to, you know, look for those people that we can kind of pull out of, you know, uni life and say, well, hang on, you know, get involved in what's happening in, you know, the scene in Portsmouth or, you know, the scene nationally.
Yeah, because it's a bridge that seemingly is, from what you're saying, is working both ways. So it's a give and take on both sides. And then I guess what you both can offer is a bit of advice, because you've been there, you're doing it, and it's those elements that people would not expect. Like, it's a small percentage of the actual creative side of your work. What other things can you be telling these students that you believe are very important things to know?
See, that's one of those tough questions again. No, it really is. I mean, I was chatting to one of the students upstairs on Monday, and she was asking me sort of almost exactly that question. But there's nothing that you can actually put your finger on and say, do this, do that, do that. It's not like
I'm going to kind of jump in and disagree slightly in that probably in the time that you were chatting, they picked up 5 or 6 things that you didn't even think of as being important. But as students who are kind of stepping into that world, it's probably new. It's all the little tiny pitfalls. It's all the little tiny things that we've learned by mistake, and we take for granted as kind of practitioners that we do. That they're thinking, oh, really? Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, that's really so obvious. Or
but that's the sort of thing that comes out in conversation rather than a direct question with an absolute answer.
It's meeting you.
It's no absolute answer. I think, we're all so individual in the way that we work. And Paul was saying earlier about the day-to-day. You're never working towards one exhibition at a time. There's usually like 2, 3, 4 exhibitions going on at a time. There are other things that you want to do personally as an artist as well to bump your work up and to try out. At the same time, you've got people coming to you asking for commissions and that sort of thing as well. And it's balancing all of that and still being able to pay the rent and all the rest of it. Which makes all of our lives very, very individual and very, very different. I'm very free because I'm very independent because I don't really have a family. I have the space and the time and the luxury of being able to do pretty much anything at any time. Some of these guys have got families and family responsibilities, so they're limited really to a certain amount of hours every day, and they have to work around the family. And so all of those different circumstances and different contexts mean that the answers to those direct questions are always going to be slightly different.
Of course.
I think that's what's been quite nice about the fact that this project works for us in lots of ways, in that we're running workshops with people, so we can give them small group experiences of what we're doing and get them to they've had chance to try out what we do on a day-to-day, our working practice with the workshops. We're giving the lecture today, which is very much a kind of, this is me and this is what I do and this is how I do it, but also we're going to some tutorial time as well. So if there are those kind of, those burning questions, that silly little questions that people got that they don't want to put out in the public domain, then we can sit there and go, actually, you do have to do your books, and you have got to keep a record of everything that and all those those little questions.
Because a lot of students, and rightly so, can be very idealistic about what they want to do in life and how they see that evolving. And sometimes, yes, the inspiration comes, but there has to be a grounding, because as soon as you hit a bump that you maybe wouldn't expect, you've maybe heard it here before or something. I mean, there's a lot of things that you're teaching in the unit as well. I imagine so.
I think that part of the thing that Dave was trying to get across was that it's a process.
Yes.
And you build upon the experiences that you've had, and we're hoping to kind of introduce some of those experiences if they've not had them before, which they can then build upon the next time they've come across putting up work, or writing a statement for their work, or talking with artists about their work. They've done those things before, so it's part of a process that they can then build upon for the future.
Yeah. I've also seen as well that many students will, in the industry that I'm involved in and was involved in the television industry, that they would like to know what is the golden key.
If only we knew. It's the process.
It's the process. The basic structure of the lecture that I've got prepared for this afternoon is essentially the journey over the last 20 years or so. That's from when I graduated from here in '97, and it's that journey from leaving here as I won't say fresh-faced illustrator because I was a mature student, but to where I am now, and to the point where I have all of this freedom. If you'd have said to me 17 years ago, come back and do a TV, I would have thought you'd be bonkers.
And it's also striking that balance between inspiring the young artists, the aspiring artists that you meet, and keeping it real for them as well. How do you do that? Do you have a way of managing that?
I think you've got to find something that you love. I think anybody that's kind of really successful in what they do are doing it because they're driven by a kind of passion they can't describe. That's why we always find it so difficult. But it's that drive, isn't it? It's that, you know, you wake up in the morning and you really want to get going on whatever it is that you want to do. And you can't force that, you know, that's got to be built into someone. And if they've got that passion, then you can kind of help steer them through the kind of the obvious pitfalls and fly with it. But yeah, I suppose it's kind of putting over that idea that, you know, if you're really driven with it and if you're determined, you know, keep sticking to it. It doesn't happen overnight, you know. It takes years and years and years of, you know, of process, of, you know, of failure, of learning by your mistakes and then trying again and trying something new and seeing somebody doing something better and working out what it is that they're doing and applying those things. And so, yeah, it's just that, get those experiences, get as many experiences as you can under your belt, because that will help you kind of get your pathway and your passion and drive for it.
Never stop learning.
Yeah, just never stop.
Yeah, no, it
Never
doesn't,
stop
no.
learning. No,
Yeah.
just because you finished your course doesn't mean the learning's finished by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. Well, we'll finish on something that obviously this university and this faculty is doing something terrific here, and it's a great collaboration. Are there going to be more of these? I know it's been going for a while as well, but what other ideas and what other things can we be doing to collaborate more?
From my perspective as a lecturer on an illustration course, to go cross-disciplinary, I think, is probably the most productive thing to start to think about next for me. I'm like to be kind of starting to think about maybe working with people who are writing, so that the visual and the written word comes together. The scientific side of it could come in, particularly for this animal project. We'd like to kind of get connections going with some scientifically minded people, to see if we've got any kind of science and art things on the go there.
I think, you know, the university is a big resource for the city, and as, you know, a practitioner who works in the city, to be involved in something like this, or to have the opportunities, you know, if they can come along in the future, to work with the university, to use the resources that are in here, and to, you know, to work with the students to, you know, maybe they to come out and see what we're doing in our studio space rather than us coming in here. I think that idea of collaborating with kind of professionals. I know it happens with industry, and, you know, there's no reason why it can't happen with, you know, creative industry in the city as well.